Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. It's a Terps week around here, but I am not going to skip the Purple Birds of the Baltimore Ravens, despite the fact that it's a little bit of a down week. We got free agency ahead. We had the Combine last week. The draft is way out there in Vegas. Way out there. All 6-7 weeks away now. Matt Lombardo has been my friend for going on a decade from his days in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He now covers the New York Football Giants as a beat reporter up in Jersey for NJ.com and the Star Ledger of the great state of New Jersey, where Rutgers and Maryland get together every now and again. Dude, I didn't go to Indy, and I've been going to Indy for years and years and years, right? And I sort of stopped when Marvin Lewis stopped drinking with me, which is when he stopped coaching in the league. And my wife says, you don't go anymore because Marvin's not in the league. And I really don't go anymore because it's not a great event anymore, right? For a media member, for someone trying to work, do radio, drink beer, learn things about football, talk to people smarter than me. Instead, I wind up trudging around in the cold with guys like you. No offense to guys like you or to Sun King Brewing. But, being on the beat, it's a little different than maybe it was the first time you went. Give me a little recap here, Lombardo. I mean, you're there, I'm following you and everybody there, and I'm thinking, boy, I'm glad I'm not there.
Yeah, no, so first of all, thanks for having me on. And listen, for the guys listening to this show, the Combine that you see on TV is not the Combine that's taking place in Indianapolis, right? Because especially this year when they moved all of the workouts to prime time, there's really not a lot of work that gets done from a beat reporter standpoint that we can't do from our couch. So really this event to me, and it's been pretty fruitful for me the last couple of years, maybe this one of the more fruitful and successful weeks that I've had, it's what goes on at the steakhouses at night, at 47 Prime and at St. Elmo's and Harry and Izzy's, where you might catch an outcast head coach drinking with his agent who will spill the tea on maybe a member of the coaching staff that you cover or give you some background information on some players in the league, and really just a chance to glad hand, fist bump, and exchange business cards. And that's really what this week has become. And, got a couple tidbits, a couple things that I've reported the last couple days regarding the Giants, some things I've heard about free agency coming up in the next couple of weeks here. But I think what fans don't understand is that what happens in Indianapolis, it's really the groundwork being set for free agency, because you have every agent in the league, you have every executive, every scout, every coach in town, all confined to about a 1.5 mile radius where there happen to be about 12 different bars, 4 of which are populated by the entire league on any given night. So certainly I can understand skipping it and just kind of doing the background reporting from home on the prospects and all of that. But I get a lot out of the networking and the exchanging of information over the beers and the cocktails through all hours of the night, evening, and morning.
And the cocktail sauce that makes you cry at St. Elmo's as well. Matt Lombardo here. He covers the football giants of New Jersey. He really covers the National Football League. You can follow him at Matt Lombardo NFL. He's up with the Star Ledger in Jersey. Let's start with the Giants just briefly. For my audience, it's what you do. We're a good organization, right? Like, when I bring guys like you on, we're like, man, everybody's chasing the Ravens. They're 14-2. They got the MVP of the league. They've got the same coach for 13 years. He's trying to get in the Hall of Fame. The only off-season issues they have are, will Marshall Yonder retire? Will Matt Judon resign or whatever? That, they have all these draft picks, and they're the smartest guys in the room. And then there's, like, sort of everybody else trying to figure out, who is my quarterback? How many needs do I have? I have needs on both sides of the ball. Who is my coach? Can he really coach? All of those issues are real for every team that wasn't 14-2 last year. There's a lot of question marks in a lot of places, and you cover one of those places where they don't have the MVP of the league at quarterback, right?
No, they don't, and they have a franchise quarterback, a kid they believe to be a franchise quarterback in Daniel Jones, a franchise running back in Saquon Barkley, a couple of good wide receivers, a couple of good tight ends, and that's about it. Listen, Nestor, you look at this roster, to me, they're 3 years away from competing, which is dangerous territory, because you'll be then entering contract negotiations with Saquon Barkley, and you'll be on the back end of Daniel Jones's rookie contract. I just look at this defense right now. The secondary, you have Jabril Peppers at safety. You have DeAndre Baker, a first-round pick at cornerback, who they like a lot, but a lot of uncertainty with Sam Beal and Corey Ballantyne, a late-round pick and a supplemental draft pick. And you look at what the Ravens have done to a lot of success. You look at what teams like the 49ers and what the Chiefs have done. They've built their defenses on the secondary and a dominant defensive line. And the Giants secondary is flush with holes. Yes, they have a lot of cap space to, be movers and shakers. On the offensive side of the ball, I think you need to look at both tackle positions as needs, and certainly one more playmaker with a lot of speed to complement Darius Slayton, who was a diamond in the rough in the 5th round last year and made a strong case for Offensive Rookie of the Year with his 8 receiving touchdowns, which led the league. But you look at what teams that have had success early with young quarterbacks, what they've done in Baltimore, pairing him with Hollywood Brown, what you've seen in with the Rams going out and getting Brandon Cooks for Jared Goff, and with the Eagles getting Alshon Jeffrey for Carson Wentz. You need a dominant, reliable playmaker at wide receiver to really fast-track the development of your young quarterback. But the Giants need to plug their offensive line because, as Dave Gettleman said at the Combine, last time he checked, it's tough to make passes and complete passes from your back. And that's where Daniel Jones found himself quite often last year.
When you're 4-12, I mean, it's easy for me to say you're traveling around with it. I haven't had a lot of 4-12s here, right? Like in all the years we've been here, all the Ozzies and Erics and Billicks and Harbaughs, 4-12's like a complete outlier around here. And you say, how did it get so bad, right? Especially in a division where nobody's really any good, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Listen, they have $73 million in cap space, and they have a couple players that they could release to create some more spending flexibility. So I'd expect the Giants to be big players in free agency, and it wouldn't surprise me if cornerback Byron Jones is their first phone call. And quite frankly, he should be. A 24-year-old ascending cornerback, top player in free agency, should reset the market. The Giants have the need and the resources to do that. You get Byron Jones and you draft someone like Isaiah Simmons at number 4. Now, the conversation and all the chatter in Indianapolis, Nestor, and I reported this on Friday, was that Dave Gettleman is serious about trading back. And they're sitting there at number 4, and they have all the holes and more that we talked about. He has a head coach in Joe Judge, who learned at the altar of Bill Belichick that when the guy that you're targeting at number 4 or someone who doesn't grade out as a top 5 pick on your board is not available, you trade back and get assets. And if you don't have a player there, you trade back again and get more assets. And the player they're targeting that I've been told in a trade back scenario is Derek Brown. So if you can somehow move back to, say, number 6 with the Los Angeles Chargers, get the 6th pick, take Derek Brown, now you have the makings of a dominant defensive line with guys like Dexter Lawrence and guys like Derek Brown up front, where you can put some pressure on the quarterback. You can sign Byron Jones. You can go out and draft a tackle in round 2. And now you're starting to cook. But you look around the rest of the division, and I think the Cowboys have a lot of talent, but a short window based on, their cap space situation. I think the Eagles have an aging offensive line that they need to replenish in a hurry. And the Giants are sitting there at 4-12 with some young pieces, but a lot of holes. So this offseason and the 2020 regular season, Nestor, it's going to determine whether or not Dave Gettleman is back in 2021.
Well, you sit there with the chip at number 4, and that used to be something to say, we'll trade back. Then when the clock comes, you got to find a partner, right? And all of these drafts have been a little weird, and you talk about spinning around in Indianapolis and who's going to draft who and who's going to trade back. I have found all of the information that is ever told to the media to be a lie, right? Like all of it is political. All of it is designed to sort of get your nose off the ball, so to speak.
For sure.
And where the Giants are, this is, finding trade partners to move back is not an easy thing to do. I mean, the Ravens are sitting where they are at the end. We wish we were 33rd, quite frankly. Or 32nd and a half at this point. We're not, but when you're sitting there, there's no impetus to move up ever, other than the teams at 18 and 20 think you want to move up. But the moving around part, that's the game you're going to play the next 6 weeks, right?
But for sure, and I think that when you look at this draft class more than any in recent memory, it's a scarcity of quarterbacks. You have Joe Burrow, who's the consensus number 1, potential all-pro for multiple years type of starter, earmarked for the number 1 pick. And then you have Tua. And Tua's coming off a horrific hip injury. Now, all signs are that the medicals have cleared and that he's going to be ready to go. But if you have a situation where you're looking at teams like the Chargers, you're looking at teams like the Dolphins, teams that need quarterbacks, there aren't that many to be had. And that's where I think you start looking even at the number 2 pick with Washington. They could sit there and take Chase Young or Jeff Okudah. But if the Dolphins come calling and they offer you 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks and a future first-rounder, that's tough to pass up to probably still get either Okuda or Chase Young. And then you have the Lions, who are also quarterback needy. So the top 5 picks, top 8 picks, really, I think there are ripe for some blockbuster moves to be made in the mold of what we saw a couple years ago when the Jets moved up with the Colts to go get Sam Darnold.
Matt Lombardo is our guest. He's been my friend for going on a decade and a half, doing all things in Philadelphia and then up into New Jersey. Now covering the New York Football Giants as a beat reporter at New Jersey Advanced Media. We call it the Newark Star Ledger. That's what Jerry Eisenberg would call it as well on NJ.com. He is also a Springsteen fan. Is Bruce going out this year? I mean, what's going on? You're up in Jersey. You tell me. You got some insights?
Well, I know that there have been some rumblings being heard from the farm out in Colts Neck. I know there's an album being recorded. Now, whether or not they wind up releasing that in touring, your guess is as good as mine.
Did you listen to the country thing like 6 months ago? I mean, my wife keeps saying, why aren't you listening to that? And I'm like, it just didn't come to me, It
grew on me. Listen to it a few times.
Okay.
And go and on demand the film release, because anytime he plays live music, it obviously goes to another level. My wife and I fell in love with the album after watching them perform it in the film that he put out.
All right, so I mean I need to. I feel like a jerk because I'm a Springsteen guy.
Spend some time on it. There are some gems.
I've just been
there.
busy. I'm trying to fix Baltimore, Matt. I mean, it's a tough job. You know what I mean?
I'm
here doing all this Baltimore positive stuff. So for you with the league and the grand vision of this thing moving out to Los Angeles and all, and obviously the draft's out in Vegas and they're going to throw Goodell into the pool and all that. Some sense of the NFL's business on all of this and the CBA and what you're hearing about the 17th game and the owners trying to stick it to the players last week and rush this thing through in the middle of March. And, I'm following the Andrew Brandts of the world. They're like, all right, pump the brakes here a little bit. There's no rush. There's no games being played this weekend. Nobody's in a hurry. But it's very obvious this 17th game and all these international games, the Chargers or the Jaguars, somebody's going to wind up in London before all this is over with. That's all very obvious to me because that's where this thing is going, and there's nothing to stop that.
Oh, for sure. The 17th game is happening. The playoff expansion is happening. And I think the biggest sticking point from talking to player reps last week and talking to people who were in the room during the NFLPA negotiations was the $250,000 cap on that Week 17 game. And I think that was almost incendiary, put in there by the owners to fracture the union, because you have the superstar players who have long-term contracts that won't be affected by that move, looking at that and having sticker shock. And then you have the younger players looking at that and shrugging their shoulders, so it kind of sends the union into a bit of a tizzy. But the bottom line here is, Nestor, I think that when you look at what the owners are proposing in terms of adding an extra offensive lineman to the active game day roster, raising it to 47, adding spots to the practice squad, expanding the rosters, you're talking about more jobs. And I think the rank and file members of the union, the guys who might have 1, 2, or 3-year NFL careers or potentially be cut out of training camp, the incoming and young members of the union are going to be voting this thing through. And I think the superstar players are just going to have to deal with it because otherwise you're looking at a work stoppage for one or multiple seasons potentially. And you know as well as I do, talk to the players day in and day out, that these guys aren't saving. These guys aren't tucking, thousands of dollars away for a rainy day or a rainy year. So I think in the end, while it might be contentious, I do believe this thing will get done. The owners have obviously the impetus to get this thing done so they can start negotiating a contract during what is currently a solid economy and a solid stock market situation. And they risk, the longer this coronavirus outbreak spreads through the United States and the longer that the stock market is kind of, propped up by Treasury money by Donald Trump, that if the bottom falls out and TV numbers decline during an election year as they did in 2016, that they won't have as lucrative TV contracts to sign. So obviously the owners have a lot more impetus for a quick deal than the players did.
Matt Lombardo shared some great information. You can follow him at Matt Lombardo, NFL, and NJ.com. He's out on the Twitter thing as well, covering all things New York Football Giants. Any thoughts on the Ravens and the kind of year they had and sort of the revolution of John Harbaugh? I know we were going to get together at the Super Bowl, and you went one way and I went the other way, and we were trying to get you to sit down. We never got together, but we would have been talking Lamar and revolution right around that point, as much as we would have been talking about Pat Mahomes and the death of Kobe Bryant that week. But the Ravens and what they did last year and how the rest of the league adjusts to that, and then how the Ravens are going to adjust, quite frankly.
Yeah, Nestor, I think that it goes back to what we talked about with young quarterbacks. I think they still need to go out, the Ravens do, and find one more speedy receiver with reliable hands, whether that's through the draft or free agency. You can't ever have enough weapons around your young quarterback. And I look at the AFC right now, and I see two teams for the foreseeable future, and that's Baltimore and Kansas City. And I think that as long as Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson are standing, their two teams should be earmarked for the AFC Championship game. And as far as the rest of the league goes, I think it's a fool's errand to be looking for the next Lamar Jackson or the next Mahomes, because not only do those guys not grow on trees, but other quarterbacks don't have the impact on both facets of the offense, the passing game and the running game, that Jackson and Mahomes have. So the more the Ravens can build around him and the more that you can kind of fortify that defense, I think the better off their chances of making the Super Bowl next year in Tampa Bay are going to be.
Matt, always a pleasure to have you on, man. I'm sorry we didn't connect at the Super Bowl. I'm glad we got together here this week. I'm sorry we were not sharing a shrimp cocktail at St. Elmo's last week, but we play in Indy already this year. I got to go out there once this year. I'll get my fill. At some point, maybe I'll go one more time for old time's sake before they roll it out to L.A. and all the coaches and the GMs disperse to Beverly Hills somewhere or over to Manhattan Beach where nothing will get done. But always following your work, always following the sense of humor and the sense of great patriotism that you display, as well as your beautiful child out there on Facebook. So have a good time up there. I hope our paths cross, man. We do have the Giants on the slate this year. We have a Ravens NFC East sort of intersection here, so you're going to get a crab cake down here before it's all over with, right?
You got it, brother. I was going to say, where are we going for crab cakes? Because if it's a Sunday game, I'm down there Saturday night. If it's Thursday night, I'm in town for lunch. So you name the spot, and I'll meet you there.
All right, I'm buying. You will never eat a tourist crab cake in my town. I'll take you to Fadley's, brother. All right?
You got it, brother. Looking forward to it.
Matt Lombardo from the swamps of Jersey and a true Bruce Springsteen aficionado, as well as a Giants beat reporter. Spent a lot of time in Philly as well. I've known Matt a long time. Matt Lombardo, NFL. Follow him there on Twitter as well as NJ.com. You can find me out on the bio, Toyota.com Audio Vault, 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. All of our Baltimore positive stuff up and running. Ted Van Antoulis this week, former Baltimore County executive and Towson Times publisher. Unbelievable chat with Ted. You'll hear that at WNST as well. And Sheila Dixon, our former mayor who is running for mayor again, joining us at Fadley's on Thursday morning, as well as Frank Kelly this week in advance of the Fellowship of Christian Athletes and the big Monday night event with Ed Reed, or should I say Hall of Famer Ed Reed. Nasty at WNST.net, the best way to find me. Our morning newspaper ships each and every morning. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. I'm going to be telling you about the JW Brick 5K coming up. Victor Brick and Lynn Brick, our dear friends. They're doing an event on April 26th. I'll be telling you more about that later on in the month as well as part of our community and charity series, all brought to you by our friends at Cole Roofing and Gordian Energy, as well as Dennis Colazzos. We'll be here on Thursday from 3 until 5, driving you home to the Dennis Colazzos Show. I'll be a part of that in the 4 o'clock hour rebroadcast on Sunday morning. And any breaking news happens next week when the Ravens get on the clock with free agency. You'll get it first on the WNST text service. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. I'm blowing March kisses everywhere this month. Make sure you stay tuned for that. Give a wink to our friends out there. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.